Hi everybody, welcome to Stories with Steve. Today we're going to talk about an incident that happened to me when I was a sophomore in high school, shortly after I had appendix surgery. It was during football season, and it was a Friday night. It was an away game, and we were headed off to the football game. I wasn't able to travel with the team because I wasn't dressed down because I had just had my appendix taken out, and so it was going to be a couple of weeks before I was able to play. So I rode down with a friend who didn't want to drive down by himself. Now the drive was about 45 minutes to an hour away. And we get to the game. Game hasn't started just yet. We're probably 10, 15 minutes early before kickoff. And we're walking through the parking lot. And as we're walking through this parking lot, I hear somebody call my friend Matt. I look over off in the distance, and there's two guys that I knew from school, but I wasn't friends with them. Matt was friends with them. He became friends with them through wrestling. And so we walk over there, and as we get closer, I can tell that they've been smoking pot. Now, I didn't smoke weed. I didn't smoke cigarettes. I didn't do any drugs. I didn't drink. I didn't do any of that stuff. So I was a little taken back by the whole thing. But being with Matt's just talking to these guys. They're talking about what they're going to go do after the football game. And like I said, Matt was friends with them. So we're sitting there, and I can really smell the weed. And I look down past them, and around the corner comes a police officer. And he's got his lights on, stops probably, 10 feet from the car that we were at. And when I see this, immediately in my mind, I'm thinking to myself, I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm not here with these guys. I just rode with Matt. We're going to the football game. I got to get out of here. And so I just turn around and start walking away from the police officer. Because in my mind, I'm not doing anything wrong. Well, the police officer gets out of the car. He yells at me not to walk away. Once again, he's not talking to me because I'm not the one that was smoking weed. I was just walking by. And I keep walking away. And he yells at me again not to walk away. And it was a little bit stern, a little more stern and more firm in his conviction with yelling at me. And so I decide, you know what? I'm going to keep walking because he's still probably not talking to me. And as I continue to walk, he yells, freeze. I'm like, yeah, maybe he is talking to me. So I turn around, and he was definitely talking to me. So he has me come back to the car. And as I'm walking back to the car, he's radioing in, more police officers to the rescue, more backup. And so another cop car pulls up, and we're in this parking lot of the school, and there's like 3 cop cars there now. Got their lights on, their spotlights are on us. They have us put our hands on the cars, they search us. I'm trying to talk and let them know what's going on. They're telling me to be quiet. They start searching the car because they told each other some code. I'm assuming it's because they smelled the weed, because everybody could smell it. So they start going through the car, and in the car they find a bag of marijuana. It had some pills in it. They found some acid. They found a knife, just all this stuff. And as they're coming out of the car, the officer says to me, "You're under arrest for," and he just names off this list: possession of narcotics, controlled substance, open containers of alcohol within a vehicle. Just this huge list of all these things that we were under arrest for. And I'm thinking, this is so not good. I have nothing to do with this. I'm just walking by. Well, they open the hood, they pop the trunk to this car. And man, when they popped that trunk, it was completely full of cases of beer. I'm talking, you could not fit another can of beer in this trunk. And I'm thinking to myself, we are going to jail. And I have nothing to do with this. And so we're talking to the police. I'm telling them my side of the story. Matt's telling him his side of the story. The other 2 guys are telling him theirs. They got us all separated. And as I'm over here talking to this officer in handcuffs, I hear through the lights, "Hey, isn't that Steve Rader in handcuffs?" That was my girlfriend's sister. So my girlfriend's family was walking through the parking lot at that time. And my girlfriend and her father and her mother and her sister all saw me in handcuffs in the parking lot of the school with my team jersey on with my name on the back of it. And the only thing, it just kept running through my mind, I have nothing to do with this. Why am I under arrest? I didn't do anything wrong. Well, at that time, little side note here, my dad was an announcer. He announced the football games for the radio station, the local radio station there. And he was up in the announcer's booth getting ready to call the football game. So we were out there for probably, realistically, it was probably 15, 20 minutes that these police officers were talking to us and getting our stories together and trying to figure out what was going on. So the one officer asked me, he says, so where are your parents? How did you get here? Explained to him once again, I came with Matt, he drove, but my dad is up in the announcer's booth. We can go talk to him. He'll help me out. Well, as we're walking into the stadium, I remember something that my dad told me when I was younger, and that was, if you ever get into jail, if you get yourself into jail, don't bother calling me. He said, you got yourself in, you get yourself out. And those words just kept ringing in my head, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so not going to end well. And the crazy thing for me was that the deputy walked me. We walked into the stadium, and I had to walk in front of the entire crowd and then up the steps up to the announcer's booth with this deputy, and everybody had just seen what was was looking and seeing what was taking place out in the parking lot. So it was somewhat of a small town, and everybody knew, almost everybody. So everybody knew that I was under arrest, in handcuffs, in the parking lot of the school, and my dad's up announcing in the booth. Well, he marches me up to the booth, and the red light's on, saying we can't enter, we can't go in. And I waited, and then the green light goes on, which means we can go in. So he goes in, and he asks for my dad. He says, "Are you Mr. Rader?" My dad says, "Yes, I am." He says, "Mr. Rader, your son was just arrested in the parking lot for," and he names off this long list of things. And I'm thinking to myself, I didn't do any of that. I had nothing to do with it. And I'll never forget this. My dad, on the air, he still had his headphones and everything on. I don't know if he was on the air or not, but it makes a better story if I say that he was. He looks at me and he says, "You make me sick. Get out of my face." And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I didn't do anything. So the police officer, the deputy asked me to step outside, which was bad because I'm standing outside this door and everybody, well, not everybody, but 3/4 of the fans that were in the stands are up looking at me, talking. And I just want to put up a sign that says I didn't do anything wrong. So, I don't know, it seemed like forever. The police officer comes back out and he says, "All right, here's what we're going to do. Because your story collaborated with Matt's and with the other two guys, he said you didn't know them or you weren't with them, you were just riding with Matt, you guys were walking by, they called you over. He says, we're going to let you go. You're not going to get, nothing's going to get on your record. We're not going to do anything about it." He says, "But let me tell you something. Even though you were not with those guys and were not participating in what they were participating in, you were guilty by association. By the mere fact that you were there with them and those things, you're guilty." So they let me go. I ended up having to explain this story to everybody in the stands, and it took till about halftime before we were able to just focus on the game. So what I learned there's several things that I learned from this experience. First and foremost is that you don't have to be participating or be involved in something that is not right without and not be guilty by association. Just by the fact that you're there, you're going to be guilty because you're there. It's that simple. So that really stuck with me, and from that point on, I was very careful to choose my associations and to choose where and who I spent my time with. I didn't go to parties because I didn't want the parties to get busted. And even though I didn't drink, and all my friends knew that I didn't drink, I didn't smoke, I didn't do drugs, I didn't do any of that stuff. But if I was at that party that they were doing those things, I was going to be responsible. I was going to get in trouble for being there and for doing that. And I didn't want to have anything to do with that. So that was one of the first things that I learned early on, was that the people who I hang out with are going to have an effect on me, good or bad. And I really wanted to make sure that I hung around people who were going to have a positive effect on me. Um, the other thing that I learned was that sometimes we're going to be in situations where other people are going to see what's going on. They're going to see what's taking place, and they're going to make a predetermined, they're going to have a predetermined idea as to what took place and what the outcome is. Me seeing my girlfriend with her parents walk by, what do you think they were thinking about how much longer our relationship was going to be going on? Just based on the fact that they saw me in handcuffs with these other guys with a car full of beer. Do you think they want their daughter associated with something like that? No, I can tell you that they didn't. And so the perception, just the mere appearance that I had anything to do with that affected the way her parents viewed me and the way that my girlfriend viewed me. And it wasn't positive. It wasn't a good thing at all. The other thing is that I had my jersey on with my last name on the back of it. And I didn't really think about this until I got home and I had to talk to my mom about what had taken place. And the one thing she said is, I cannot believe that you had your jersey on with our family's last name on the back of it, and that's what you were caught up in. Once again, I tried to explain I had nothing to do with it, but she didn't care. The fact that my jersey had our last name on it, to her was an embarrassment. And rightfully so, because when you go out anywhere, when you're out in public, when you're at school, when you're at church, when you're at work, at sports, whatever you're doing, and everybody knows your last name, you're representing your family. And I didn't represent my family very well that day. I wasn't thinking about that, though. I wasn't thinking about the repercussions that could take place from my actions, because in my mind, I wasn't doing anything wrong. But I was, because I was there. I should have just walked away and not waited for the police officer to start yelling at me not to walk away. Now, as I've told that story and looked at the things that I've learned from that story, Matt, what's interesting to me is that I was friends with Matt, but I wasn't friends with Matt's friends. And so that led me to start to wonder, should I associate with people who associate with people who I don't necessarily want to associate with? What I mean is, if I'm friends with Matt, but he's friends with drug dealers, do I want to be friends with Matt? I wanted to, I really need to reconsider that relationship. Because Matt's friends will have an effect on me, as that's a perfect example of how that took place and how it did have an effect on me. Not a good effect either. So what I learned is that our associations have a huge impact on our lives. Huge impact, good or bad. Jim Rohn says that you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So I've really, really thought about associations and friendships and people that I have relationships with throughout my life. And one of my favorite sayings is that pigs don't know that pigs stink. Well, what does that mean? Well, when you walk up to a pig, you got a pigsty with a bunch of pigs in it, and they're rolling around in slop and stuff. When you initially walk up to that, it doesn't smell very nice. It stinks because you're not used to being around that slop. But if you get in there with the pigs and you start rolling around with them and you spend quite a bit of time with them, over time, you won't recognize that smell any longer. That smell's not going to be bad to you because you're going to get used to it. And so I have really paid close attention to who I spend my time with. I try not to spend my time with negative people who bring me down. I try not to spend my time with people who always are involved in things that I don't want to have anything to do with, that don't represent who I am. And that can be hard. That can be a difficult thing for a lot of people, because sometimes those people are our family members, or those people are people that are that we work with. They're people that we're on a team with, or that we're associated with through some organization, and we have to spend time with them, so to speak, because they're there when we're there. But the reality is that because pigs don't know that pigs stink, you want to avoid hanging out with pigs unless you want to smell like them. Our associations, guys, are so important. In fact, they're probably the number one determining factor in who we will be in 5 years. Outside of the books that we take, that we read, and the information that we take in, the people who we associate with will determine who we are and where we're at in 5 years. It's the single greatest factor to determine our choices. It can determine, there have been studies that show that if you hang around negative people that are doing things that you're not supposed to be doing, your stress level is elevated, and when stress level is elevated, you're at higher risk of disease. There's all sorts of things that come with hanging around negative people. So in my life, I have lumped people into 3 categories. I have people who I am not going to spend any time with, and that may sound harsh, but I have to love myself more than I love other people, or I won't be able to love anybody else. I have to be more concerned with me as a father, as a husband, as a son, as a brother, as an employer. I have to be concerned with myself, and then I can be concerned with other people. But there are people who I'm not going to associate with. There are people who I'm going to spend a limited amount of time with, and then there are people that I'm going to choose to surround myself with. So let's talk about each one of those real quick. In the people that I choose not to associate with, I have friends that I really like. They're really funny. I enjoy being with them sometimes because they're fun, but they do things that aren't representative of who I am and what I stand for. And so I've had to talk with some of those friends and say, look, this is where I'm at. I can't associate with that kind of stuff any longer. So that's very difficult. Sometimes it was very difficult, and I even lost friends over it. But then I got to thinking, if they're not willing to understand where I'm coming from and make those changes to better themselves, really, I don't need that in my life. And that's the one thing that we have to remember, is that our friends, see, friendship and relationships and life itself is like, just picture that you're on a skateboard, right? And you're skateboarding up a hill. Well, as long as you keep kicking, that skateboard is going to continue to go up that hill. But the moment that you stop, that skateboard doesn't just stay where it's at in the same spot on the hill. It starts going backwards. And that's how relationships and friendships and people are. You have people that are going to continue to inspire you to continue to kick that skateboard so that you continue to progress up that hill, or you're going to have people who are negative, people who are not inspiring, people who drag you down that hill to stop you from wanting to progress. See, our friendships, I truly believe that people don't change who we are. What people do is they either inspire us to be better because of who they are, or when we surround ourselves in the slop, we end up just like the pigs. One of the two. They either inspire us to do better, or they make us lazy and uninspired, and towards the point to where we don't care. Well, we know which one of those two we want to be, right? There's an example that I use in some of my leadership courses where, sometimes I hear people say, well, I just want to help them out. I just want to give them a hand up, and that's one of the things that their justification for hanging out with negative people, with people who are not representative of who they want to be. So one of the things that I do to teach this lesson is I stand on a chair, and it can be with a youth group or with whoever it is. If someone is standing on a chair, and the person standing on the chair, their objective is to lift somebody up onto the chair with them, while the people that are on the ground are trying to pull them down, who's going to win that battle? Regardless of whether or not the person is physically stronger on the chair, the person that's on the ground is going to pull that person on the chair off, and they're going to pull them down to their level. We can't lift anybody up to our level. All we can do is live our lives in such a way that we inspire other people to want to change the way that they live theirs. That's what we can do, okay? So we have the people who we don't want to associate with, and I recommend that if those people are not willing to go along with you in the direction that you want to take your life, run away from them. Don't walk, run, okay? And then we have the people who we realize that we want to spend limited time with. Now, these people are people that you can have a great 15, 20-minute conversation with, half-hour conversation with. Somebody who you're okay with spending 3 hours with, but you don't want to spend 3 days with them. Okay, those people are I put them in the category that you just want to spend limited time with them, and those people can be very healthy, and you can have a very fruitful relationship with those people, understanding what your limitations are with them, because you just don't want to spend too much time with them. But they're fun, they're good people. You just want to spend a limited time with them because they don't really inspire you to progress long term, but for the short term, they're good for you. And then you have people who you want to spend time with. Now, these people are people who inspire you to become better. When you look at them, you say to yourself, I want to be like that person. I want to have what that person has, whether that's success financially, spiritually, physically, whatever area of their life you're looking at and aspiring to become like them. Those are the people that you want to associate with and spend time with them. There's a lot of ways to do that. Now, a lot of people might look at that and say, well, yeah, but I'm not friends with anybody like that. Well, you need to check your friend group. Start putting yourself in positions to meet those types of people. Go to the organizations that they're involved in. Do the things that those people, whether it be sports, recreational activities, meetings, organizations, whatever it is that those people are involved in, put yourself in a situation to be around those people. Meet them, establish a relationship with them, and then figure out what you're going to bring to the table. Because every single one of us has been given talents and gifts, and it's up to us to choose to develop those talents and to share them with other people. So that person that you're aspiring to become in one area of your life that you want to spend that time with, in order for them to really want to be with you, they're going to have to get something out of that relationship also. So figure out what you bring to the table to that relationship and spend time with those people and develop that. And those people are going to be the ones that are going to inspire you to do better and to change. Thank you guys for listening. That's today's Stories with Steve. Hopefully you got something out of it, and look forward to seeing you next time.